What's up, everybody? Welcome to the X Podcast. It's been a minute since I've been here with you guys. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
Excited.
For real? Are you honestly doing great?
I'm doing great.
You just got a haircut today.
I did.
Good. I don't know if we can get a close shot.
Thank you.
If you can
get it?
hear it on the podcast.
Just
How
a
good his
weekly
hair looks.
military fade.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to be with you guys. Yeah.
Good to have the crew back.
The crew back together. Last couple episodes been really great. I've totally enjoyed them. Episode 7 on parenting with you, Jesse, and Becca.
I learned so much. I went a little long.
Yeah, what was it? 4 to 5 hours?
Are you surprised?
I thought it was good, though. Some great insight and content. And then, Pastor Tim, you had your boys on last week. You had
Pastor friends.
a couple pastor friends and talk about leadership through crisis, and I thought that was really great.
It was great. I love being able to hear from them. I think sometimes it's great for people outside of our circle to hear from some of the friends and influence that I have in my life and just what we're all trying to deal with and trying to lead through this crazy year.
Extremely disappointed in your Starbucks order still.
What was that?
What
A caramel
I didn't
apple
even know it
latte.
existed
Yeah, you got
It's
like
not
an
even a latte.
apple moonshine,
Juice.
peachy, fruity fruit.
No,
like
that was Keith.
Oh, okay.
He's the one that had
A
the
very berry extra
basic white girl suburban drink.
berry refresher. We need to work on that. You want some of my coffee? Where'd it go?
No, you don't have any
You
coffee.
usually just do like hot chocolate.
No, I don't.
Marshmallow.
Actually, to be honest with you, and I go through a Starbucks line probably at least once a week, if not twice a week. Not on my own. 9 times out of 10, I will not order myself anything.
Every time I'm with you in the Starbucks, you get super serious
Why?
because you are really serious about your order.
I don't order most
You're
of the
like,
time. I probably order once or twice, but I don't order most of the time.
I wanted 137 degrees, but I get my double stoppers.
I get my wife one on most Fridays in the morning. I go work out and then take one back.
Yep.
And but every time I go through, I just can't bring myself to. I don't love coffee, and so I'm not going to spend $5 on a drink, and I'm not going to waste my calories on it. I'd rather have a dessert.
But did Pastor Matt say he didn't like coffee?
No, he doesn't. And so that's why I found out. That was the first time I'd tried a caramel apple cider. Now, I don't disdain it like he does. Like, he was like, it smells awful to him. I actually don't mind the smell of coffee, and I can drink it with cream and sugar and who knows whatever else. So, anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about. Coffee? That's boring.
Sounds like
That is not-
excuses.
Let's talk about something exciting.
Sounds like excuses. To me, I'm just kidding. Big news on the pandemic front, because I know this is where you come for all your news if you're listening.
Yes.
But
Your unbiased news.
the first doses of the vaccine here in Columbus, Ohio, started this awesome conversation about whether or not you're going to get vaccinated. So you posted something on Facebook last night, started a little bit of a fire.
I just started a fire. Just ask people, or would you get it?
And lots of articles being shared from quote-unquote credible sources. It's really great. But I wanted to ask you
Sad that we have to
guys,
say quote unquote.
what's
credible
your
sources.
what's your thought on the vaccine? What's your just kind of gut feeling on what's happening right now? Your put your finger on the pulse of the country and on maybe just our context. And what are you feeling? What are you seeing about this vaccine?
The pulse of the country.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that Bill Gates created the virus so that he could then cooperate with QAnon
Yes.
to implant aliens and demons in us through the microchip of the vaccine. That's how I feel.
I feel like I don't know that we'll get into this. I feel like we need to do an entire episode on conspiracy theories.
I think that'd be awesome.
I just find it fascinating, and yeah. So I posted on
My brief real answer is I will get it.
Wow. Okay. So you get it.
I will get it.
I posted on social media a couple places, and I was just curious because I knew we'd talk about it today. We came up with this yesterday. We're like, let's talk about the vaccine. It's so current. It just got approved and shipped and has arrived at the hospitals here in Columbus. My wife's a nurse, so she got information on it. And
Did you see the story? Sorry, the first patient in the U.S. that got it. It was like the 96-year-old World War II vet.
Was it?
And it was like this emotional experience or
No.
whatever. I forget what state, what hospital.
Oh,
but-
that's cool.
Yeah, Columbus today. Or no, yesterday.
Yeah, Columbus. And so I posted just curious, and I would say just scrolling through from the yes and no, I would say, and on Instagram, I put it on there. I would say it's about 25% said yes, 75% said no. Mm-hmm. And I find
75%
I
said
find
no.
that interesting. I'd be honest with you, without trying to offend anybody. Based on some of the comments and just some of the things that I've heard and seen, not just through there, I think we are kind of quick to jump to conclusions about the virus and the vaccine without really hearing from experts and hearing from and reading documentation. I mean, Pfizer put out their documentation. It was posted in the New England Journal of Medicine. It was shared, with the FDA and the committee weeks ago that they reviewed it. I think there's just an overall sense of distrust in general in our culture. And so I find the vaccine just fascinating. I think it is a medical breakthrough. It is a marvel at how it works with using mRNA to deal with it. A lot of people don't understand that it is not new technology. It's a new use of it. This idea of how
it's
they're
never
creating the
been
vaccines.
used before in a vaccine.
They've tried for about 2 decades.
Right.
They've been working on this. And you know why? I'll tell you why. I've been educating myself on this quite a bit. But really, it just comes down to that anytime they put mRNA into our bodies, that enzymes within our bodies attack it immediately and destroy it. So it doesn't even have a chance to get into the cells. It doesn't have a chance because what mRNA is basically, if you don't know, we all have mRNA in our bodies all the time. We have DNA that off of our DNA strands creates mRNA constantly because mRNA is the instructions that create proteins that do everything in our body. Everything in our body happens because of proteins that are created. And so it's the instructions that come off. So your DNA is creating mRNA all the time in the cell that is triggering proteins, as instructions for proteins that are created that do different things. It happens in a natural response, just even in your immune response. That's all based on that. So for them to do this, they had the genetic code of SARS-CoV-2 as far back as January of this year. I believe there's a scientist in China that actually mapped the sequencing of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And so from that, they've actually created mRNA, synthesized mRNA strands that have the same sequencing, and they try to inject it. The problem is they never could figure out how to get it until this year. And they might have been working on this technology, but they actually figured out a way, which is they encapsulate the mRNA inside of a lipid capsule. So they put it inside of these lipids that they can basically use to inject intermuscular into your body. And what happens is that protects the mRNA until it can be absorbed into the cells. The lipid capsule actually dissolves, leaving and injecting the mRNA into your cells, at which point the mRNA can then, because it's actually the genetic sequence of the spike protein that is on the actual
You have
virus.
done your research. Jeez.
I've done quite a bit of research on this. What I find is that a lot of people have jumped to a lot of conclusions, this is my point, and haven't done any research. All they know is that what they've heard, what's been said. How could it happen this fast? How could they do this?
How much are they paying you to say this?
Now, this is only one type of the vaccines being developed. So there's 4 different types in development. There's what you're talking about, the mRNA, DNA, then there's the vectoral, then there's the protein-based, then there's the weakened immune response.
Correct, which is the standard way they do with influenza.
Right.
and
Those
things
last
like
2 are
that.
basically just trying to generate through mimicked versions of the virus an immune response.
That's the standard way, which is to use an antigen.
Right.
So it's a weakened version of it to stick it in your body.
Well, what you're talking about is the Pfizer one, and then it's the biotech
Pfizer,
one.
Moderna.
And Moderna.
And Moderna, both using this one. That's the next one that's up
it's
for review
brand
right
new
now.
platform.
December 17th.
So here's my real question, though. Okay, so I would agree with you. I think most people have a kind of a predisposition towards things like this, vaccines in general. And what's interesting, it's very apolitical. I was at my gym this morning, and I knew we were going to be talking about this, so I asked all those guys, and there's all sorts of different political views in there, all right, who's taking the vaccine, and split down the middle for different reasons.
Really?
You know, and when I was like, guys, this is weird because I know your politics, and you know, this is something that, you know, it's pretty split down the middle. It's like it's not like everybody who voted for Trump.
Surprising to me,
right? It's not like everybody who voted for Trump thinks that, you know, you shouldn't or should, and everybody that voted for.
I don't think this is a political thing.
One of the guys said, when it comes to what you put in your body, politics don't matter. And I was, that's fascinating. You know,
I would agree. It should not matter.
But what in times like this
should matter.
But what in times like this has been apolitical? I mean, barely anything.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think some people would blame a lot of this on politics, and maybe you form your opinion by basing.
Yeah. So
think,
anecdotally, I experienced the opposite because everything that you take from information, a lot of times traces back to the politics, the framework, the worldview of whoever you're listening to.
It's just conflicting though right now. You know what I mean? Because with the transition in government and with Biden moving into the presidency, it's like, you know, for the good of the country, both of them are pushing the vaccine. During the election, you could probably say that the Democrat Party was subtly using language that was making people question their confidence in any sort of vaccine. You probably say that
President Trump was touting what was being created.
Well, then you have President Trump, who is, you know, was, you know, all about the vaccine.
I think that, I mean, yes, let's just say this. I think it is political. I don't think it's political in the terms of party lines. So I think it's political in the fact that whenever you have something happening quick like this, and then you have a government agency. So the FDA is a government agency. At the end of the day, it's there to protect us from foods, medicines, things that would be harmfully administered, whether it's through medicine, whether it's just through, in general, it's being served. And so whenever you have a political, or whenever you have a federal agency that is making a determination, you always have concern. You have concerns that politicians would get involved for one reason or other because they're getting paid. I mean, let's go deep.
Microchip.
They're getting paid.
Microchip.
I'm telling you, we got to do a whole episode on conspiracies because
we got microchips
crazy.
With us right now.
Exactly,
all of us.
But you know, people will follow this chain to go. Okay, Pfizer and biotech and Moderna. These companies, they have so much to gain that they would pay off politicians who would put pressure on the FDA to approve. You know, and so because of all of that, there's so much skepticism about something, and then the fact that the process is faster. Now let's talk about
skepticism, though, is on both sides.
Yes, absolutely. That's
what do you have? I mean, let's just talk about. I just said
it's not party line. It's still political in the fact that it comes from
political,
federal.
But it's not like split. It's not like it's not as easily predicted or predictable as many other things. You know, like how do you feel about, you know, big government, small government, or war? It's like you have the super left sentiment of I don't have trust for people with money, and you have the super right sentiment, which is I just don't trust politicians. You know, so you have distrust on both sides. I think, which is I think what makes this argument interesting. But I'll just bring this point up. When I asked everybody in my gym, okay, I work out with a bunch of guys that are, you know, anywhere from 30 to 55 years old. Okay, all pretty healthy. I asked them, but what if you were at risk? You know, what if you had, you know, you were in the risk categories? Maybe some of them are and don't realize it or whatever, but what if you were, you know, 80 years old and you had early, you know, stage 1 kidney failure? I said, and every single one of them was like, absolutely, I'd take it. You know, what do you have to lose? Why is that, Russ? Tease that out for me a little bit. I see you over there stewing.
I just, for me, I guess the part where I'm still slightly disagreeing that it's not political is I think about the anti-vaxxer movements.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds, but most of the anti-vaxxer movements that I've been aware of have been on the right. I'm sure there are some on the left. And so you have that. Then when you think of conspiracy theories, most of the odd amount of, in my mind, hatred towards Bill Gates and the distrust there has primarily, from what I've seen, been on the right.
You think? Of Bill Gates?
Yes.
Oh, dude.
Yes.
No.
Absolutely.
That was my reaction.
No,
when you said that.
Absolutely.
You don't think that, but I don't disagree with you that
Where
there
are
is
most
some
of the
that.
conspiracy theories when it comes to
But about
QAnon?
what? About like the
QAnon microchips.
but
all
large
that.
corporations, you know what I'm saying, and the wealth gap. I mean, that's all very left.
Not with wealth, but with science. I'm not talking about wealth and government corruption, but when it comes to like science and what is he really trying to do to chip us or track us or.
But the real conspiracy theory, at
By the
least
way,
with
Bill
young
Gates
people,
gives away more money of his own money to help people.
He gave
around the
$100
world.
Are
million
you a Bill
than
Gates
anybody else.
apologist?
I'm just
He
saying.
gave
I
$100
just
million
understand all the
towards
hate.
And we're just
for him.
having fun over
I don't
here.
understand
We're
all
not-
the hate for him.
You know, we're having
But
fun.
anyways, the question was. Let's go back to the question because the question was, all right. You said all these people said if I was at risk, which there have been people who have died who didn't think they were at risk.
Right.
Right. But if I were at risk, I would get it. Right. That was the sentiment.
Right.
And
Which
that
we're
was
all
it.
at risk.
We're all at risk.
Just different risks.
I mean, I think the challenge. Look, let me just.
I
say
wanna
that.
make an
Let me
announcement.
say
Can I make
something
an
about
announcement
this.
real quick?
Let me say something about the risk.
Oh,
Let
but I
me
have
say
an
it.
announcement.
Okay.
You have it.
Say it.
I have the antibodies. I had it.
You
You
do.
do.
You do.
I had it. I went to Kroger and got my test,
Good
and
for you.
I've got the antibodies.
They
I
won't
don't.
let me take it.
Anyways.
What should I get the vaccine if I have the antibodies?
Yes, you should.
Yeah.
But Kroger told me I
Yes,
was
you should.
immune.
Doesn't matter. A short term. And let's talk about a little bit of the long term and being at risk. Okay? Just because from what I understand from this virus. First of all, I'll say this. A lot of people think that if I won't die from the virus, that I get healthy or I get sick and then I get better. Because you got sick at a point, you got better. That why would I need to be afraid of the virus? Why didn't it? Well, what they're finding out right now, and this is what's really scary about this virus, is they're discovering is that they're calling out long haulers that there is long-term damage that is happening from this virus. They do not know the effects of it yet.
Right.
There are tests that are being done in the military as they kind of study, and they're finding out that a lot of people that had it are actually showing signs of heart disease. These are young men, women at a young age that are showing signs of heart disease.
I think that's debunked.
No, it's not.
Yeah, because that's why they didn't play college football.
No, that is
Yeah.
not true.
Yep. Look
That is
at
not true. No,
Yep.
I'm telling you.
There's
this
actually
is-
a doctor at
this
Ohio
is-
State, I think.
No.
That they were all worried about
one
this
of the
cardio something.
physicians
Somebody
who is
tag an
on the
article or
committee,
something.
one of the physicians who's on the committee for the FDA for approving it, was talking about this exact one of these tests, and these things are going on right now.
I'll agree with you
There's-
that there is.
There's vasculitis that's being caused from this.
What is that?
Well,
Well,
vasculitis.
you still have the people that haven't even got their smell or taste back.
Yes, there's that exactly.
I lost my
There's-
smell and taste,
there's-
but I didn't realize it until I got it back.
Listen, there
How's
are
that possible?
There are things that have been happening.
When you start tasting stuff
didn't
again,
miss
it's a
stuff?
big deal. But like, so for example,
which means it's affecting neural receptors in your nose that is going to your brain.
so I got Chipotle, and if you get on, do you guys have a TikTok?
no,
I do not.
Okay, you should. It's
no, we
great.
shouldn't.
They have on TikTok these things, people who have COVID, and they're like, I think lime is super spicy. I think when you have COVID,
Really?
like it's like hot.
I've
like
heard
a
coffee is like
jalapeno,
water.
like hot. And so I would have Chipotle. You know, people bring me Chipotle when I was sick, and it'd be super spicy. And I was like, this is weird. You know, did they make their stuff different? Did they change one of the salsas or whatever? I mean, hot, like make your eyes water. Oh my gosh. And once you start eating the same stuff, you know, a few weeks later and you get your taste back, it's like, oh my gosh.
I'm just
That's
saying,
crazy.
there's other effects of it. Why do you think there were people, and this was early on? I think it's because we actually have some therapeutics that have helped alleviate this. But because of vasculitis, you can have blood clotting. You saw people with strokes, young people having strokes. So we don't know what kind of damage this has been done. So it's like, well, I recovered from it, so I'm fine. Well, maybe you are, maybe you're not.
Yeah,
and
but
that's the thing. So what's interesting, everybody's afraid of the long-term effects of a vaccine, but no one's afraid of the long-term effects of the virus, which is odd to me when we actually have data showing that people are losing sense of taste and smell, some that have months and have not gotten it back yet. It doesn't make
here's my
sense to
question.
me that we've got this argument in our mind that was like, the vaccine, I'm going to grow a third limb
I think that
on my
might-
arms, or I'm going to grow, you know what I mean? It's like, why do we have that, but we're not actually afraid of what the virus could do long term?
I think that might be, I don't think that your statements are indicative of the majority of people's sentiment. Like I think it's just
people are afraid.
there's
of
a
the
lot
vaccine.
more gray. I do think people are afraid of the vaccine.
Read some of the
no,
comments?
I do. What I'm saying is that there is a gray because both of what you said is true on both ends. We don't know the long-term effects of coronavirus. That's scary to probably everybody, and we don't know the long-term effects of a vaccine.
We don't. But what I'm saying is we are seeing already the long-term effects of the virus. Okay.
Long term, as in 6 months. I mean, but that's not
what I'm
long
saying.
term.
It's already starting to show up. It is long term when you think about people that get the common cold or people that get influenza and then they recover 2 weeks later.
But
and then
you've had mono. What's mono like?
It was bad. I couldn't swallow.
For a long time?
No, it wasn't that long.
Is there
about,
effects?
about 2
But I've
weeks.
heard of people that are fatigued for months after mono. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Sure.
Like we don't have enough time since the beginning of this virus to say that we know the long term effects. There's a lot of gray.
What we do have though is we do have a track record of other vaccinations, and that science hasn't been on the decline.
Yeah.
It's been in progress. And we do know, even though this was expedited, they have gone through, from every bit of data we have, every ounce of regular protocol that any other vaccine would go through. So all these vaccines have gone through, they even go down to phase 3 large clinical trials that include tens of thousands of people. Who has external panels, was it SAGE, Strategic Advisory Group of experts that analyze all those results, the efficacy, the safety, and this is happening across... Third party.
This is not FDA. This is not
So
Pfizer.
even though, understandably, there's an
reviewing
urgency
all
of
this.
time, they're still going through all the protocol that any other vaccine would. So my question would be this. Again, I get that it's tricky, it's gray, but I think my question would be, we know the loss of life of this past year. And we know the devastation of hospital systems, of workers, of the people that have lost their lives. We know the danger of it. We also know that we can't forever keep with the same behavioral patterns that we have, and there's already been economic crippling, and we can't just shut down forever. So the question with both of those is, if not the vaccine, then what?
Right.
What's the solution?
Well, most of the people that don't want a vaccine don't believe the virus is real.
Well, that's
sorry. I'm just trying to tease it out. I agree. I think that when it comes to this vaccine, we haven't had a ton of time with this particular vaccine, and it is new. It is new, and it's not new. Again, it's 20 years of research working on this concept. We know how to create memory within our bodies and our immune systems, so that the next time, because that's all you're doing when you vaccinate. Okay, when you vaccinate, and they found that with this particular vaccination, that it takes 2 doses. That you get one, and
is this a prime and boost?
Huh?
Is this a prime and boost?
And you get the one, and then about 3 weeks later, you're supposed to get another one. That's that second one that is actually doing the greatest impact for the long-term protection for your memory cells. And so they kind of have found that it is. I think it's because it is a new way we're delivering it with mRNA versus using antigens, putting antigens into our body. I mean, that's all it is. That's why everybody's freaked out about the flu. This one's funny to me. There's a lot of people that will never get the flu vaccine. I get that. I get the flu vaccine most years. A lot of people won't get the flu vaccine because they swear they get sick. What they don't understand, is they're putting a weakened antigen in your body. It's not actually giving you the flu. But what happens is when you put a weakened antigen in your body recognizes, I've got an invader. So naturally, which by the way, as you study this, you just discover, I believe, you discover how infinitely beautiful and amazing our Creator is. Because when you discover what our bodies are made to do, you're immediately what happens when it recognizes that is that your white blood cell count just begins to white blood cells, which are your T cells, your B cells that come out of your bone marrow, begin to go into operation. They populate, and they attack the virus. Now, when you do it with an antigen, what's happening is you're getting your white blood cell count is raising. You're creating all of these that are attacking this antigen, which then creates your memory cells. Now, here's what's fascinating. What they've discovered is the reaction that happens when you get a vaccination is a natural part of your immune response to creating the immunity. So in other words, when you may get a headache, and you may get some body aches, and you may get headache, body aches, you may get fever. Your temperature is going up in your body. They've found that your temperature going up actually gives your immune system's working. That's what's happening. And so it's interesting because even in the trial, the phase 3 trial that Pfizer had done, they actually had a lot of people taking ibuprofen, Tylenol, things that will reduce fevers. Why? You actually shouldn't do that if you can help it. When you get a vaccination, and something happens, which, by the way, they're saying that by your second dose, it's not as much in your first, but your second dose, that more people are getting symptoms of fever, headache, muscle aches, redness in the area. That's common. That means your immune system's working. When you actually are taking medicines that lower your temperature, you're actually working against your immune system developing and the antibodies that it needs. And so they actually say the longer you can go without it. Now, the reason why they did this in the Pfizer study is because the real world practice of this is people will go take Motrin. They're going to take Tylenol when they get it because they're going to have a fever and they're going to feel terrible. Right. So actually within the actual study, in the phase 3 trial, they did it in a way that is going to be replicated in general population.
And you know what's crazy is I think one of the reasons that it does make sense, I get it, it does make sense why there would be a hesitancy. There's something counterintuitive about sticking a needle in a kid's arm. Now, we forget that millions of lives have been saved through this. You'd think of smallpox. Yeah. And even, actually speaking of that, the nerd side of me was like looking up like the original vaccination, how it happened. And what's crazy is even though there's something that doesn't seem natural or intuitive about a vaccine, it actually, you're talking about the beauty and the complexity of like the human body, it actually first came about through organic, natural process. Edward Jenner, the guy that introduced what we believe is the first vaccine, noticed, this small town doctor, that there were people dying of smallpox, but he noticed that there was this other virus that had come up called cowpox. And that the kids that had developed cowpox were then immune. And Tori just got this idea. He's like, okay, what if I actually manipulate this process and injected? And that's how it came. So what's crazy is it's actually, in a way, it's this almost natural biology that we have built into our DNA that we're just saying, hey, how can we leverage that?
And that's the whole point with the mRNA vaccines, is that you're actually introduced. This is what people don't understand about the mRNA. What's cool about this is you're not actually putting any of the antigen of the virus in your body.
Right.
You're only introducing the code, the instructions, the sequencing for the spike proteins on the actual the surface of the virus. Now, the spike proteins, what they do is the spike proteins are there to bond to your cells so that there can be the absorption of the virus into it. So that's what the spike protein. You see it on actually a lot of different viruses. They have these spike proteins. Have you ever seen the coronavirus like image that we've all seen, the green one? And those spike proteins, what is so unique and revolutionary about this is they're actually attacking this, and this isn't the first time they've done this using this technique with surfaces, but they're actually taking the spike protein. Your body then goes, spike protein, I'm creating antibodies to the spike protein. Now someone asked this question, well, if I've already had it and I developed the antibodies, your superpower that you have, and I've developed
immune.
Why should I get the vaccine? Well, here's one reason why. In my understanding of it, is that with this vaccine, you're actually teaching your body to recognize the spike protein and not even allow it to attach to your cells, which means you will not develop the disease at all. Versus you having the disease and your body fighting the disease with antibodies. And so for a long term...
What they don't know yet is whether or not you can be infected with the disease. The vaccines that are out right now are preventative of any sickness, of any illness from the disease.
You won't actually have the disease, not the actual virus in your body.
But basically don't know if you can actually be infected or not. That's
correct. And infect it and pass it on.
Right.
Which goes back to the question about risk. Here's the thing I think that we at least need to consider. People who say, well, at my age, there's a 99.7% chance, maybe higher than that I'm going to recover. Why would I need to? I would just say maybe it's just not about you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about the fact that you could still pass it on. You can still, like, if you actually have the disease, you can actually, and that's a big question too, whether or not you can still in transmission even with this. But if you pass it on to somebody else, who passes it on to someone else, who passes it on to a family member who dies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because you just walk through that.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. Okay, it is very natural to fear what you don't understand, and none of us really at this table have done the proper research in our medical professionals to fully understand the process of a vaccine. All we have to go on is our history, our family of origin, even of what our family historically has thought of vaccines, the type of primary care we receive, and what their opinion is about vaccines, yes or no. There's lots of opinions out there. So I actually think that the struggle of whether or not you think you should or shouldn't get the vaccine, I think it's a healthy struggle to. I think everybody should struggle with it. Sure. Not like you should fear
just
it.
Accept everything that's given to you.
I think you should, like if you're going to wait for one of us to say, oh, well, my pastor said that I should.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? That's a bogus reason to do anything, without struggling.
I think you should. I'm just kidding.
But struggle with it, come up with, do your own research. Ask your own questions of people that you trust.
I think that's the challenge that I feel like most people in their response that they haven't actually done any research.
Right.
They've just listened to whatever circles they normally listen to.
Well, is that, though?
And it's just like, I shouldn't. Huh?
Because, in my opinion,
I think we're lazy.
People aren't
As a people, we're lazy.
That's not true. I think that it's hard to trust any information.
Well, that's also true. People
To
aren't
say
sure
that
what
it's
to
about the laziness
But see,
of people, I think
to
is-
me, here's what I look for when it talks about trust. I look for the people that have nothing to gain in this.
Right.
Through this whole process, all of the pandemic, I feel like this is the tragic thing is that we haven't always just, it has gotten political. We've seen doctors who sit in Senate hearings talking about therapeutics and other things that just seem like they don't go anywhere. Okay, that's a big question mark. I have a big question about some of those. And it's like, I want to listen to the doctors. Listen, if the U.S. government has said that they're going to provide a vaccine to all the U.S. citizens at no cost, and it's not that there's no cost, they're going to be paying these companies to do it, then what is the incentive for physicians who are on front lines who are dealing with pulmonologists and endocrinologists and epidemiologists, and what is I don't know, I guess just what is the general practitioners, what is their benefit? The ones who are doing it. When they're coming out and saying things, or the scientists who are actually reviewing this, the independent scientists are reviewing it. Like, why don't we, I guess the question is, why don't we trust things that they're saying?
I understand that there's so much data out there and that it can be tricky to figure out who to trust. What I don't understand is why it's easier to believe a Facebook conspiracy video than it is to believe the epidemiologist. There's 8,300 shares on a Facebook video just a few weeks ago that this virus or this vaccine is going to implant a chip in people. So why is it easier to believe that? Like, I get that it's a really tough spot. So I agree with you. I think, I resonate with what you're saying. It should be a struggle. There's a part of me that, like, I have a passion. Like, I love nutrition. I love health. Like, and I am innately more inclined to holistic healthcare. I go to a chiropractor. I try to eat well. I think Western medicine and philosophy is inherently flawed in that it doesn't look at intrinsic health. It's bandaged through. And thank God for medicine. Thank God for a life-saving procedure. So there's part of that anti-vaccination movement that I resonate with, and that I think the deepest level of health should come naturally, holistically. However, when we look at something like this, when there's already a pandemic that hundreds of thousands of lives are being lost, and you look at where you're getting your data from, I've said it before in a different podcast, but to me, I look at several things. I look at one, diversification. I think when you look at who do I trust, I think the first thing before you look at who you trust is to look inside of what am I looking for? What are my motivations? What's my bent? The people that I trust tend to be people that none of us are free from bias. I'm not free from bias. None of us are. But the people that I tend to trust first not only do have a passion to educate themselves, but second off, are not emotionally entrenched. And because to me, even it's just human nature, a reasonably intelligent person, when you're emotionally attached to this side or that side, that immediately compromises your intellectual honesty. It just does. For me, for anyone. And so for me, like when I'm looking at who do I trust, I want to say, who are supposedly the experts? And let me get a diversification of views across political spectrums, across local, international spectrums. And what does the broad consensus of that seem to be saying, especially those without an agenda or a bias or something to gain?
I agree.
I do think this is actually a conversation about trust. I think we have trust issues in this country right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure that it's a new thing, but the manner in which we have to go about, finding our news and what we believe about our governmental system and our electoral process and the information we're getting. I was actually talking to my little brother. I think I mentioned this on another podcast. I actually think that the youngest generation is the best at. They are going to be so equipped in order to handle just the amount of information coming their way.
Yeah.
I think they hold info with a looser grip. I think that they are really great at doing what you said, at not hearing something from a big name or somebody that has a bunch of followers or an accredited news. Like, to them, what they hear on TikTok, this is legitimate, what they see on TikTok means kind of just as much as what you see on CNN or Fox News. And it's a very interesting thing. And their ability to scan the field for what's the information thrown their way, and their ability to sit back and not make a premature judgment on this or that. I think the news, and I don't think you see this from the news. I think you see a lot of young promoted, a lot of young leftists and a lot of young alt-right type people. But I think that the consensus as far as young people is they are very anti-conspiratorial. I think that they are. I don't think that they.
What age do you think is really into conspiracies?
What age do I think is into conspiracies?
Yeah. If they're not, everybody older than them.
I'd say my gut would tell me 40 and up. I think that age group of people.
I would probably include your age and up.
Yeah, really.
I
wouldn't.
Are you into it?
I wouldn't actually.
Yeah.
In a weird way, I just think that.
Well, I
think a lot in their 30s too.
I do. I think it's probably 30s and up. Here's why I think. That's why I was asking that question, because in my lifetime, where I feel like I've seen a shift in our country when it comes to trust. Really, I mean, you go back and study the different generations, Gen X, my generation, which I'm on the young end of Gen X, but they tended to not trust the government when it came with the Vietnam War. So that's kind of what started things. But what I've seen that I think affects down to a younger age than that is, that's why I like what you said. To me, one of the most significant moments that I felt like shifted things whether or not people could trust the government was what happened after 9/11. So when I think about what happened after 9/11, when we turned around and then got into a war, and one of the primary messages that we heard was weapons of mass destruction. And then when there were no weapons of mass destruction discovered, that I feel like that just kind of started us down a road. And then you add to that social media and how that kind of just in media and social media, how it just began to kind of expose things. It just seems like that's when it felt like for me growing up, I just felt like there was a shift that happened sometime after 9/11 and after that moment where there started. And if I think back to the conspiracy documentaries that have been created, I feel like there were a ton of them that came out about 9/11. And I'm not here to talk about 9/11, but I feel like something changed in our country with that whole situation. I don't know. That's just that's why I think people that are in their 30s, I think people that were old enough to kind of really this just happened, and what happened after that. To me, that's what I see.
Which those people are probably mid-30s right now. People that were old enough to really digest all that. Yeah, I agree. It's hard to pinpoint it to one thing, but when you think about, the first thing I think about is volume of information, and I think that it's different when you grow up with an understanding of the volume of content you have to sift through.
Yeah,
and I don't think that. In overgeneralization here, guilty as charged. I don't think that really your generation and up have. I think that they distrust media because of the volume, and I think they're still adjusting to the volume. And the people specifically that you could grow up and every household was watching the same news station. And news was news, not opinion.
Yeah.
News was news, not editorial. And I think that generation has had a more polarizing response to the, they have I don't think that my age and younger, as another generalization, will run.
Keep trying to make yourself younger.
Well, I just obviously it all centers around me. So
yeah, you are the definitive.
But if I was a delineating mark, of that in between, like, was it growing up at the start of the social media, but still can remember a time.
How old were you
we didn't have cell
when
phones,
social media started?
I think
15,
freshman
14?
in high school
Okay.
is when that really started. For me.
iPhone?
iPhones wasn't until college. I didn't get an iPhone until college. Smartphones, we started dabbling, but like you couldn't get on the internet on your phone really until college, for me. So I don't know. I think that the generation below me will have a less polarizing response. I don't think it'll be I think they hold things looser. I think they have a more realistic understanding of how big the world is and how small of an, like, I don't think they grow up thinking I can change the world. Maybe some, but I think they generally grow up going, I want to make my sphere as a better place. I want to make a positive contribution to those that I interact with. Whereas I'd say my generation was more so, let's change the world.
Millennials we're more idealistic in that regard.
But I think there's a humbling that comes when you realize that there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions, which is why I have back and forth with you about the vaccine and being political. I think that I just think that the world's so big and that there's so many. Like, I think
it's a generalization for sure.
For sure.
And a lot of it is was more just like my anecdotal.
Right.
Versus
Which is all we
yours
have,
at the gym.
for sure.
Like a lot of all of my friends that are very, whether this is right or wrong, all of my friends that are very skeptical about it are all on the right. I don't have any friends on the left that are skeptical about it. Again, that's my small
Maybe
world.
you need some friends.
How do I get
I'm just
friends?
kidding.
It's like, but I don't have any friends on the left.
I don't have any friends on the left.
Just kidding. Just joking. But I think let's back this conversation up. What do you do when you feel like you can't trust anybody or anything? Because, and is that we have the worldview of Christianity. We follow Jesus, and he kind of directs, the steps to our lives and the way we think. So, is it Christ-like to not trust everybody?
Well, I think what we've seen what we've seen happen culturally, I think, has impacted even in the church world. So I think this general consensus of distrust within our culture, I think, is brought into every arena. It's brought into relationships. It's brought into church. It's brought into all of that. And and so there's a general distrust of leaders of organizations. There's a general distrust. I mean, I've kind of grown up seeing that in the last probably 10, 15 years in the church, that there's a distrust of the church. And I think that I guess what I'm saying, that disposition of distrust is one that I think that is kind of something we have to be challenged by a little bit as Christ followers, because at the end of the day, all of our faith is based on trust. Like, right? Everything that we believe spiritually is based on trust. We trust the Gospels. I just read a book, just finished reading a book, Can We Trust the Gospels? It's a fascinating book, really historical book, talked about a lot of things outside of the Gospels that give us more evidence that we can trust them. But there's big distrust of the Bible. I mean, that's huge today, right now. It's like, well, I like church, but I don't trust the Bible. Or these leaders, or how it's being used. And so I think it is a core issue that we have to wrestle with. And what does it mean to trust? I think the trust is one of those things that you are given in any kind of relationship. Like I was saying it yesterday, it's like it's a deposit that is made into a bank account.
Yes.
If you look at a relationship, there's a big deposit. Like, you start out with trust. If I don't have a reason to not trust you, then our relationship is going to be, it's great. Like, when relationships start off, they're great. Friendships, whatever relationships, because there's trust.
Well, and you tend to reciprocate whatever you feel back.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, you tend to, if you feel like someone doesn't trust you, you tend to not want to extend them trust.
Yeah. So I think then what happens is then there are moments along the way in our relationships where there are things that get debited out of the account. You do something where you aren't trustworthy, even in a small way. Hey, yeah, I'll meet you there. You're 15 minutes late. You know what I mean? Or you call last second, hey, I forgot I had to go do this, right? All you're doing is just taking a little bit of money out of that account.
Yep.
And in the back of their mind, it's like, okay. And then when that happens a second time or a third time, all of a sudden, I can't trust that person, right? And that's a minor way. We get into much more significant issues relationally. And so I think the big question is, like, what are we doing to credit those accounts in our relationships to build trust? And I think it is hard for me being in the seat that I'm in and being a pastor and a leader of a church. I think what's hard for me sometimes, and I know this is reciprocated, it could go both ways, is to hear people get a sense of feeling like, I don't trust you as a pastor. I don't trust you, but yet not even having a conversation, or can you give me a reason why you don't trust me?
Yeah.
Is there something in my track record that has proven to you that I'm not trustworthy? Like, I want to know that. And if there is, then I want to be. But can I just be honest with you? Most of the time, I never hear that. No one ever says, well, it's just, you just hear rumor mill, you just hear whatever. And there's such an easy way to disconnect today. And there's most people I don't trust. And it's like, okay, what did I do to take that out? I would like to know. And it may have. And if I did, I need to know that, right? I mean, that's just part of trust. And so I think it's an ongoing thing. But I feel like if we are going to, I wonder if it culturally comes and affects people's faith in Christ. That if just in general we've grown up in a culture of distrust, that how hard is it for people to be able to trust God?
Yeah. I think that's profound, because I think that if we were to really boil down our entire life, you would boil it down to the relationships you have with the people and the things around you. You know, I think the reason our political climate is so hot and heavy is because people love our country. Yeah. Right? People
passionate about our country.
Very passionate. We are in a relationship with our country and where we live, and our history and our values. We're in relationships with people, spouses, friends. I mean, our workplace. We have a relationship with money. We have a relationship with all these things, and it's, in my opinion, the core motivation of everybody is to be fully loved and fully known. And you cannot fully love something if you aren't willing to trust it.
Yeah.
In my experience, you guys might disagree, but I can't fully love my spouse if I'm not willing to give her my trust. I'm not saying that you can't have your trust broken, because we all do, because we're all imperfect. And honestly, our government's not perfect. Any person you interact with, your workplace, you're not perfect. You know how I know that? Is because you're not perfect either, and I'm not perfect. And so it's really hard when you expect everybody and everything to be perfect. Right? It's like, oh, well, my trust is earned. Well, good luck. Good luck experiencing any depth in life, or any real love in life, or experiencing what it's like to be loved. Because if we all crave people's trust. I work all the time for people's trust. The trust of my coworkers, the trust of my spouse, the trust of my children. And I want people to trust me, knowing fully I'm imperfect and make mistakes. So how are we supposed to trust when we know our trust is going to be broken?
That's a good one. I think we, it's been said to err is human, and I think it kind of comes back to us getting to a point. If I can trust God, right, then I can trust Him with being hurt by other broken trust.
Yes.
And I think this is just, to me, that's why I think faith matters. And that's why I think my trust in God really does matter. Because if I've been hurt over here, there's a couple of responses that happen. And I think this is one of the reasons why people don't trust government leaders. They don't trust sometimes even pastoral leaders, is because they've been hurt by somebody, right? So what happens is you've been hurt by somebody, and you end up taking that hurt and then you apply it to the next person you run into.
Yes.
We see it all the time where people come hurting. They come because I was wounded. I was hurt by somebody in leadership. And it happens because, like you said, we're imperfect people. And sometimes I've made bad leadership decisions that have hurt people before. And I have to deal with that, right? But what happens is we take that and we carry it with us. And we go from place to place, person to person, and we live in such a way that we reject it, that we are not going to trust anybody. And I think the antidote to that, if you want to talk about the vaccine to that, of distrust, is my trust in God. In other words, this has been unfair, what's happened to me, but I'm going to trust that, God, you're fair. I'm going to trust justice to God.
Yes.
I'm going to forgive. Okay? That enables me to heal and be able to trust against somebody else. May not trust that person ever again. But that enables me to be able to trust again. It's because I can trust every situation to God. I can trust all my hurt to God.
Yep.
I can trust all of that. And if we can see that God is faithful, I love the scripture says, even when we are faithless, God remains faithful. And if we have that kind of posture and that kind of attitude, then I think it enables us to trust again, knowing we could get hurt.
Yeah.
I could get hurt again, but I know that God's my healer. And I know that I'm going to ultimately put my trust in God and not in man. And that's what I pray and hope for everybody who goes to our church. It comes to this church, it goes to any church. Don't put your trust and your hope in the pastor.
Yes.
Don't put, he will fail you at some point. He's going to say something you don't like. He's going to say something you don't agree with. You know, he's going to let you down where you wanted him to show up at some event. He didn't show up at that event because he had something else he had to do in his family. Don't put, he is not your Savior. Jesus is your Savior. And if we could get that perspective, then I think it actually frees us up to trust, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't.
No, I think it's gold. I'm interested to hear your thoughts because you're over there shaking your head.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's so many layers to it. But what you said is the biggest. If you look, when there's a trust in God, and some of this, even apart from faith, is a personality trait of like optimism. But when there's an optimism about life, and even rooted deeper than that, a trust in God, that ultimately there's a fragility that happens when I feel like my fate is in the hands of another human.
Sure.
Because then all of a sudden trusting is so risky.
Oh, yeah.
And trusting's risky anyway. It's like I there is a reality of living on this broken planet where when trust is broken, there is a process of handling and navigating through disappointment.
Yeah.
And what does it look like to trust again? But I think when there is an optimism, a hopeless optimism or especially rooted in God as my strength, He's my source, I trust Him. I love that verse. David says, I trust you from the bottom of my heart. When there's a heart bottom level trust in God, that creates a security of a starting point to have a realistic expectation of what I can trust in other people, to be able to go and serve people. Because if there's not a place where I can bank all my trust, then I'm going to feel really insecure because what if this person does this?
Right.
There's almost this freedom not to take but to serve other people. And so I think that's one layer. I think another layer is, the longer you walk in life, and for me as a follower of Jesus, the more I feel like this may sound really spiritual, I learn to discern and listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit, the more I feel like I'm postured to give realistic trust, appropriate trust. Yeah. Because there's different layers of trust. But it seems like what you're speaking to more is, do I have a spirit of cynicism or a spirit of trust?
Yeah.
And I think part of it, even on a practical level, is the ROI. It is risky to trust, but I would argue that it's more risky to not trust. Because to live a life where I don't trust is to create a really small world and a really dark heart.
Oh, yeah.
There's that verse. I love the Message paraphrase. I think Trey, he read it the other day, and it says the eye is the lamp of the soul and the body. And it says when unbelief fills you, it darkens your eyes and it makes you squinty-eyed with distrust and darkness. But when you think about the joy of a child, the faith of a child, I mean, eventually they have to learn wisdom, but there's this trust. There's this wide-eyed, and I think the older I get, one of my desires is I want to become larger with joy, larger with a wide-eyed trust that isn't childish but childlike. That as I grow older, it's tempered with wisdom. That it's like here's where I give appropriate trust. Here's where I give rope. Here's where, yes, there's going to be a guarding of my heart in a healthy way, but not in a fearful way.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm rambling.
No, I love it. I think it's actually way more important of a conversation than we could ever imagine.
Yeah, it's more important than the vaccine. What we're talking about right now.
But I think the vaccine is indicative of a larger problem.
Right.
And I think that because we're in this time as a country, we're getting really contemplative, and you really got to take a look inside and think about the things that you do and don't struggle with. I had a really intense conversation, I should say, with people really close to me the other day about corruption in government, and just sensed a complete and total distrust in government from people who I would consider to be wise, and that I would trust their opinion, or I value their opinion very much so. This really holistic, utter fatalism of we can't trust anybody, we are doomed.
Yeah.
Like everything is not rigged in an all caps tweet version, but rigged from I legitimately have lost all trust in all of our systems. And I think that it's a sad place to be in life, because I would say that you probably haven't given your full trust to Jesus. As a Christ follower, I'm talking about people who are Christians, and I would want to challenge all Christians, and people would say they follow Jesus right now, and correct me if you think that I'm saying something out of line. But if you feel that fatalistic about the current affairs of our world, maybe you have a trust problem with Jesus. And maybe have you given him your full trust as what you said, your Savior. Because Donald Trump is not my Savior.
No.
Joe Biden is not my Savior.
Nope.
And the United States of America is not my Savior.
Right.
And until you can, and also a coronavirus vaccine is not my Savior. So I think that we struggle more than we like to admit with withholding trust from even God. Because when you fully trust God, it absolutely lowers the intensity of every other earthly struggle that there is. When you fully trust in God, I'm somebody who, my personality type, I just feel like I'm more predisposed to not trust people or things. But what that leads me towards, honestly, is utter loneliness, like you said. And it wasn't until I was in that really lonely place in my life where I feel like everybody has a motive against me. That person's trying to hurt me. That person's trying to hurt me. This system was built.
You become a
against
conspiracy
me.
theorist.
You do.
With everybody.
Conspiracy theorist, but you really it's
Yeah.
just self-centered.
Yeah.
Because honestly, everybody's thinking way more about themselves than they're thinking about you.
Right.
And so I feel like the journey that God, this is personal, and if anybody can glean anything from it, great. But the journey God's been leading me towards is to trust Him, but to, if you want close relationships with people, fulfillment in life, then you better be willing to trust again. Willing to trust after your trust has been broken. That thank God that Jesus with us, God with us, wasn't black and white, wasn't, okay, you broke my trust, so I have nothing to do with you ever again. Thank God when I broke the heart of God, with my sin and my imperfection, that He was willing to trust me again. You think about that, that part in the Scripture. Jesus is, what is he being arrested? This is, when is he talking to Peter? Talking about how many times he's going to deny him.
Matthew 18.
Okay.
Oh, no, Matthew 16.
This is before he got arrested.
That's Matthew 16.
This is before he got arrested, right? And he said, before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. You're going to break my trust 3 times, Peter. This is, when Jesus close friends. And no, I would never do that, Jesus. What are you talking about? And he does. And so it happens. And what did Jesus do after his trust was broken?
He restored him.
Right.
He said, "Do you love me more than fishing?" That's what he went back to.
Yeah.
And he said yes. And he said,
but
I put him back on mission.
He went through with the most ultimate act of love any human being has performed for any other human being. And so here's this weird picture of, I know you're going to break my trust, Peter. I know you're going to break at the depth of our love for one another as friends, is going to be broken, and I'm going to predict it. It happens, and he gives his life for Peter. And when you think about what would happen in our world if that's how we handled each other,
Right.
and the government. Because here's where I'm at. I'm somebody, like I said, that got trust issues, generally feel like things are corrupt, generally don't have trust in a lot of things, struggling with all the election stuff just like everybody else, and struggling with Trump acting like he's not going to leave, and struggling with, the vote spikes. And I'm just like, what's happening? Like, this is just ridiculous. And we got split parties and split things. I'm struggling. But I'm willing to trust our system. I'm willing to trust the Supreme Court.
Yep.
I'm willing to trust all the appellate judges.
Yep.
I'm willing to trust it.
Yeah, and I think, and I love it because there's a difference. None of us would advocate for naivety or
Right.
foolishness. But and maybe this is more of an organizational level or a family or a social level than it is a national or transnational level. But I'll never forget, the first like major kind of like leadership or Christian conference I ever went to, this is probably like 15 years ago. But I'll never forget, it was Andy Stanley, and he talked about the trust gap. He said, I want to paint a picture for you. He said, you're late to a meeting, and everybody starts with trust. And everybody is given as a gift trust. And he had these little cheesy blocks on stage, but I'll still never forget it. And he says, let's imagine that you are not at a meeting or you show up late. He said, what if when you're not in the room, what's said about you is, hey, I know their heart, I know them. They probably had something going on, so it's okay that they're not here, blah, blah. And what if he said, can you imagine that? He started painting these pictures. We started getting emotional. He said, now, what if your organization looked like that? He said, doesn't that sound like Jesus? He said, but what if somebody, there's enough moments where that trust block's removed, but instead of them talking about you when you're not there, they just came to you and said, hey, let's talk about the trust block that's removed so we can get down at the bottom of this. It was just that moment of like, it sounds like utopia, but what would it look like for a culture to look like that, to feel like that? What if we naturally extended each other trust? And only once that trust was removed did, instead of us shutting down or talking about the person that's not in the room, we went to that person and said, hey, can we talk about the trust block that I feel like's removed?
I like that a lot.
Wow.
I think that's, the picture's incredible. And I like what you said about, it's not naivete or whatever. It's not being naive towards the world. To be naive is to think that you could exist without trusting.
Right.
That's to be naive.
Yeah.
But to go, no. The truth is, my trust will be broken.
Right.
Truth.
Yeah.
Right.
But to understand, you are either, like you said, making deposits, right, of trust with people and things, or you're making withdrawals. There's only one of two things that can happen. Very rarely does trust sit idle,
right,
in someone's account. You are constantly making deposits of trust in your marriage, or you're constantly making withdrawals.
Yeah.
Are you telling little white lies at your job to make yourself look better? You're making withdrawals, or are you making deposits?
Yeah.
And so, like you said with the trust block, even how you talk about people, are you talking about people in a way that helps them build trust with you, even when they've made mistakes?
Right.
I don't know. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think, too, I would not want to live my life in constant fear because I can't trust anything or anyone. Like, I just don't want to live that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, to me, when it's, I understand that there's a lot of apprehension about our government. And right now, I think a lot of people feel like there's just corruption in every party that we have. And so it's hard to just go, I'm going to blanket trust the government and everything everybody says. That's hard to do. I get it. But I don't want to have the disposition where my default is to distrust.
Right.
And I feel like sometimes that's what we do. It's almost not even, I don't know anything about that person, but because of the platform or the party they got voted in on, I distrust them. Like, I distrust that Democrat because I'm a Republican. Or I distrust that Republican because I'm a Democrat. Right. I feel like that's the wrong attitude. Why don't we get to know somebody? Why where is that trust first? And I think that I don't want to live that way.
Yes.
At the end of the day, I think sometimes you got to make a choice that, I don't want to live that way.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the more that you learn to trust God with the future and not live with a sense of fatalism.
Yes.
I don't understand the fatalism of our country right now. I don't want to get into that. And this nationalism. And I've sensed it so much over this year.
Yeah.
This is the end of America. This is the end of the world as we know it.
Something, I want to tag on to that because somebody commented on your Facebook post about the vaccine, an article about how, aborted fetuses are used in the making of vaccines. Therefore, I will never get a vaccine. Here's my problem with our country has become statements like that. So let's put people in impossible positions to do any right.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you going to take a vaccine where aborted fetuses have been harvested in order to create this thing that's going to... Okay.
What a limited choice.
Right. Okay, so now, Pastor, I'm going to put you in the spot where you are either advocating for the abortion
Yeah,
of
right.
for abortions
'Cause that would mean
for
that
the
you
killing
kill
of
all
unborn
the-
children.
Yeah.
Or you are advocating for the premature death of all those at risk in our country by not
Exactly.
taking.
But we've seen that same
Bull.
false dichotomy
Bull.
all year.
And if you are
Haven't we seen that same false dichotomy with the race stuff?
For sure.
You're either for black people, which means you're against police officers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just a false dichotomy that we've just forced people into. And I reject that as well.
have
I've
to.
said that. People can say what they want to say. I reject these false dichotomies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they're real.
But it's
In
arguing
fact,
for the
they
sake of arguing. It's not arguing towards a solution.
And they've
Yeah.
come out and said that they didn't use any stem cells.
It's how can I create
aborted
binary
fetuses, by the way.
thinking to make a point instead
Yeah.
of enter into dialogue to find a solution.
But you can't create lose situations. That's where fatalism comes from.
That's where it
Right.
does. Everything's lose. And that, and
Okay,
that's-
can I bring this back personal and sentimental for just a second?
That'd be a great way to end it.
Because
I want to go right into. I got something to say about Trump too, but I want me to.
You
Why
guys
don't we
kn-
save it for another episode?
Okay.
I feel like
So
it's-
I love quotes. Usually I can remember them, so my pride's hurting right now. But I love what you said is a while ago. You kind of synonymized. Is that a word? Synonymized? I hope it is.
Made
I don't know.
Made
synonymous.
synonymous.
That's all right.
Love and trust. And I just
I
so
messed up
agree.
a word earlier. I was trying to say immunologist, and I said endocrinologist.
You messed up 3 or 4. I wrote them down.
Did I?
We'll
Okay,
talk
thank
about
you.
it later.
We'll talk about it later. Thank you for
Add it
helping
to
me.
the list.
but this is one of my favorite C.S. Lewis quotes, and so if I could make synonymous love and trust, he said, "To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. And if you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully around with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable."
Yes, that's good.
That's good.
And
What a great quote.
wish I would have wrote it, but written it. But yeah, the older I get, I'm just, and I'm not saying this to sound modest. I'm so flawed in so many ways.
I know you are.
Get to know me well. But I even in the tough seasons, I pray nothing can ever take away what I feel like is a grounded, hopeless optimism.
Yeah.
That brings a resiliency and I was even thinking about it this morning because I've been praying in some ways in my life, God, restore my joy.
Yeah.
Like restore anywhere joy is leaking. And I was thinking about that Nehemiah promise that the joy of the Lord is your strength. And it's crazy to think about that especially if you're a faith person, it doesn't say knowledge is your strength. Knowledge is important. And it doesn't even say that peace is your strength or that or even prayer is your strength or scripture is your strength or whatever. All those things are important, but actually the most resilient person is the joyful person. And the person that can say, no matter how dark the world gets, the light in me is going to keep me wide-eyed like a child. And my fate, if you want to use that, my destiny, my heart is secure enough in what I do trust that I am never going to become a dark, cynical person.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm going to live the rest of my days believing that life really is innately beautiful.
Yeah.
And there really is a beautiful future. And there really is more that I can trust than distrust. And that it's risky to trust, but it's far riskier not to.
I agree.
I
So
could
good.
go on and on about that.
That's good though.
So good.
I think there's more layers to this in the political perspective of this year and other things that maybe we can dive into.
You were going to finally announce here who you voted for.
I was? I didn't think I was going to do that this episode. Maybe
But here's
next
what I
one.
love about what you said, and we can wrap it up. But I want to get the last word. I am.
Well, you haven't answered the question, so are you going to get?
Wait,
the
are you
virus?
getting it?
you
We're
getting the
getting
vaccine
it.
or not?
I'd get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I get it.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind. I
From
get
what
it.
from what I know now, from what I've researched and understand about it, how it works, I would get it now. Now that could change if I.
I mean,
see
honestly,
more data, but I would get.
I just think
I'd line up and get
I
it.
want all this to be over, and I want to be a part of getting back to normal. And if it gives me some
Yes.
heart issues. Like, okay. That's my personal opinion.
And who knows, the virus might be giving you heart issues.
That's what I'm saying. Nobody
You
knows.
don't know.
So, like,
So let's take the one that saves life right now.
Well, my wife's in the military and she works in the medical field, so she's going to have to get it. And so it's like, what?
I think she said on there she didn't want to get it.
You know? But
Because she's pregnant.
She can't get it.
Because she's pregnant.
Well, they're not going to.
And right now, it's only been approved for, I think, ages 16
But
and
it's
up.
unwise to do something when, like,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
certain contingency of people. Like,
Yeah.
if you're pregnant and even, like, if you're under 16,
my
they say they haven't done trials on people under 16 yet. So
My wife is doing research right now
should be
because
careful.
she takes immunosuppressed drugs because of Crohn's. And so, you're dealing with your immune system with the vaccine and with this. And so, but, a lot of the stuff that she was reading, even last night she was studying reading, we were and she said a lot of stuff she's seeing seems like that it's okay, but she wants to get word from her doctor. So I think at the end of the day, I love the fact that we can live in a country where, and this is what my hope is, that we're not forced to get a vaccine. Okay. I hope that we investigate the information and we find credible sources that we feel are credible, that we can actually, instead of just jumping to Facebook videos or somebody came out with some stat that they don't, and just kind of like created a conspiracy theory out of it, like go and understand what it does in your body and go listen to doctors, physicians, independent ones that are doing stuff on this and base and then make a decision.
Yeah.
Make a decision and go with it. But I'm with you. I want to get back to where I miss the. I hate social distancing. I want to get to the back. It's like so weird now when somebody comes up to you. It's like, and you meet someone, and it's like, don't shake their hand. Shake their hand. Don't shake their hand. Should I not? And I want to get back to where we can do that.
I
Where we
got
can
my
just
first
enjoy
hug in
life.
Atlanta last week.
Did you? Don't tell anybody that.
You're still
I mean,
here.
it was their hug.
Don't
Sorry.
tell about that.
Sorry.
So, anyways,
Yeah, I don't know. I agree. I think that, wrestle with it. We're not medical experts, don't act like we are, but we're processing it just like everybody else. And so, if I just want to say too, a final word about trust, that you two are probably some of the most trustworthy people that I know, and that I love you both. I love so many people here that and here's the thing, we've all let each other down.
Sure.
I don't trust you, lead pastor, because you're perfect because you're
Right.
not. I don't trust you, executive pastor of our church, because you're perfect because you're not. But what I do trust is this chase towards how to you guys are intentional and you want to love others in a way that reflects the heart of Jesus. And that's abnormal, and that's something that I can trust. Not that you're perfect because you're not that I'm perfect because I'm definitely not that you're perfect because you're not, but that you guys are intentional about how you love others. And to be Christ-like is to love above all else, and to be intentional about pursuing love of the people around you, and overcoming divisions, not locking yourself in an echo chamber, but to say, no, I'm going to do the hard work, to make deposits of trust in the people around me, so that we can experience a real joy and a real fullness on this earth.
Yeah.
Good.
And so listening to you guys talk about trust and all that today has helped me. So thank you both.
Hey, it's fun.
Awesome. Thank you guys for listening wherever you're watching / listening from. We so appreciate you. Email us at podcast@thex.church. And we might even talk about your topic on the air. Our next podcast is going to be from an email. Believe it or not, like, subscribe, share. We love you so much. See ya.